Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles, great millstone who are teaching the truth and sincerity, and a shout out to Yakim and Yaakwath that are tuning and listening. Shalom. Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Barak. So, they're now starting to come out with it that, yes, as a matter of fact, people were injured and killed in the retaliatory attack after, Donald Trump ordered the assassination, and so they're finally coming out with it. But look at how long it's been. I mean, this retaliatory attack happened on, I believe, January 7, January 8, but now all of a sudden they are reporting on it. Well, that just shows you how gutless Donald J. Trump is, but that's everybody's hero, right? Well, let's just find out the report, shall we?
Good afternoon, everybody. It is, or good morning, depending on where you are. It's morning where I am. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV coming to you with a news alert. A new report claims that dozens of U.S. troops were actually injured in the Iranian missile attack that happened in Iraq around a week ago. So far as I'm aware, the U.S. government has not said any U.S. troops were injured. President Trump, in his address to the nation the day after the missile attack, said that there were no U.S. casualties and all the U.S. troops were safe. So unless I am missing some kind of official announcement the U.S. government made, as far as I'm aware, the U.S. government has not said there were any injuries to U.S. troops. This new report, I'll show you the report, but it was a report in the Washington Post which was citing military officials. The report says that military officials at the Al-Assad Air Base say at least 2 U.S. soldiers were thrown through a window and several dozen U.S. soldiers were treated for concussion. So, don't know what to make of this. I don't know if the report is true. Both things can't be true. It can't be true that no troops were hurt and some troops were hurt. So we're going to bring you the latest updates on this report. And also, we're going to be taking your comments on the air. I'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts? At Lookner on Twitter is where to reach me. At Lookner on Twitter. And thank you to all of our moderators who are in our chat rooms. I really appreciate it. So let's look at the report. And if you remember, I believe the attack was 6 days ago on January 8th. And most of the missiles that landed at the Al-Assad Air Base, which is a joint U.S.-Iraqi base in Iraq. And so there's this report that came out, and, actually, this report was released late yesterday. I hadn't seen it till today. Somebody I follow on Twitter posted a link to this article, and they were talking about something else in the article, and I just started looking at the article, and I saw in the second paragraph this report of dozens of U.S. troops having been injured, and I was like, wait a second, I haven't heard that before. So this is an article from Louisa Lovelock in the Washington Post, and I believe she actually went to Iraq. Because she either went there or she's talked to a lot of people there, because she's talked to, if you look at the article, there are a number of named quotes from people who work at the base. She interviewed a bunch of people who actually work at the base and named quotes. But I want you to look at the second paragraph here in the article. Look what it says. The missile barrage last week against the sprawling Ain al-Assad Air Base in western Iraq left deep craters and the crumpled wreckage of living quarters and a helicopter launch site. At least two soldiers were thrown through a window of a meters-high tower, and several dozen U.S. troops were later treated for concussion as a result of the missile strikes, military officials on the base said. Now, there's nobody's attaching their name to this quote, but I do want to draw your attention to the fact that in the article, there are a number of named officials from the base. One of the most senior officials on the base this day is quoted about saying something. The person who oversees airfield operations, named, says something. So there are quotes in this article from a number of people, from a watchtower. This person is named a corporal. So Louisa Lovelock, who wrote the article, interviewed a number of people who work at that base who went on the record with their quotes. This quote only is from military officials. But again, what does it say? It says at least 2 soldiers were thrown through the window of a meters-high tower. Meters high would be at least 6 feet high, because 2 meters is over 6 feet. And several dozen U.S. troops were later treated for concussion. So to me, that suggests there were injuries. I mean, if people are treated for concussion, that would mean they're injured. I would also assume that if 2 soldiers were thrown through the window of a meters-high tower, they might have been injured as well. But again, I don't believe there has been...
Yeah, you can best believe it. This is going to be a cover-up, because this is an embarrassment to the U.S. anyways. You know, the fact that they lost big time in this, and nations are not afraid to fight back. That makes the U.S. look weak.
Hi everyone, this is Steering Girl. Iran retaliated against the U.S. for the assassination of General Soleimani by firing ballistic missiles at a U.S. base that Trump referred to as extraordinarily expensive. While the missiles are no longer flying in the air, the disinformation is still flying around. There's a propaganda effort to downplay Iran's retaliation because the neocon war machine wants to maintain the myth of invincibility. They need it to convince Americans that their perpetual wars in the Middle East will never have repercussions, that it could never tip over into a much wider war or even a world war. This is why it is imperative that we break down these face-saving lies. Lie number 1. Iran's missiles were shot down. Fake footage is being circulated claiming to show Iran's missiles being shot down by the US's air defenses. The footage isn't even real. It's a simulation from 2019. Yet the videos are getting thousands of retweets from people who want to believe their military is invincible. The reality is, the US didn't have the capability to shoot down Iran's ballistic missiles, otherwise they would have. Lie 2. Iran's missiles missed or were duds. This piece of propaganda often takes the form Iran purposely missed or the hangars were empty. Or as the New York Times tried to tell us, Iran hit the desert sands. This goes along with the narrative that the strikes were symbolic. The fact is that the US military admits that 11 out of the 15 missiles hit their target. Satellite images and footage from on the ground shows that Iran destroyed many buildings. A military expert from the RAND Corporation tweeted, "When I see the impact points of Iran's strikes, I don't see a purely symbolic strike designed to avoid casualties, as some have speculated. The strikes appear to target the base's military capabilities." That's another lie, that Iran was trying to avoid US casualties. No, Iran was trying to avoid Iraqi casualties, not American ones. For this reason, they had to warn the Iraqi government, because it would have very bad political repercussions if Iran ended up killing Iraqi soldiers. This was especially risky because the airbase had a US side and an Iraqi side. Here's the footage from the Iraqi side as they watched the American side get hit. The US are likely spying on the Iraqi government, so it's not a surprise they had advance warning of the attack. They just didn't know where and when it would happen.
Agreed. They knew something was going to happen, they just didn't know what. And about 11 p.m. at night, those that were able to go to the bunkers went to the bunkers, but there were still troops that were out manning posts.
Except for the few that didn't make it in time and filmed this video running for their lives.
Yeah, we're good.
Moving down to hangar 2.
Moving down to hangar 2.
I don't think Iran was trying to avoid US deaths. I don't think they thought it was possible to avoid them. They even attacked the sleeping quarters at the base.
These used to be living quarters. This is where the troops would sleep, at least one of the areas.
And this is where you used to?
Yeah, this is my room. Yeah, my bunk was right in the corner right there. And
Being here, it's truly extraordinary how anyone managed to survive, that there were...
It seems everyone agrees it was unbelievable that anyone survived. But I don't know, should we believe it? The British Foreign Secretary said he had reports of casualties. Then there's this mystery. Germany is where US soldiers are sent when they're wounded. All these lies culminate into one big lie, that Iran made a deal with the US to stage the strikes. To people that believe this, please think logically. If there was an agreement, why was Iran's air defenses ready for a possible retaliation? Why was Trump making outrageous threats to try to deter Iran, like bombing cultural sites and having a disproportionate response? Obviously, Trump was prepared to absorb the blow, because the alternative would risk a regional war that would destroy Israel. But he wouldn't have wanted Iran to know that he was prepared to take the blow by making a deal. He would have wanted them to think the US would go nuclear if Iran retaliated. Why would the US agree to have their bases bombed by Iran, or even agree to lose face so that Iran could save face? Why would they want Iran's government to save face in the first place? They've been trying to overthrow that government for years. It doesn't make any sense. People keep linking me to this article saying Switzerland talked to Iran about de-escalation. Obviously, Switzerland failed to get Iran to de-escalate since Iran launched ballistic missiles at a nuclear power. Think about what they want us to believe here. They want us to think that Switzerland was negotiating how much destruction the US was willing to accept without retaliating. And the craziest lie of all, that's being spread by the disinfo agent QAnon, says that Iran wanted Soleimani killed. The guy was a national hero. He defeated ISIS. Iran's leaders were crying at his funeral. Iran was prepared to go to war with the US, prepared to risk a world war over his death. That's something else people who have no understanding of geopolitics say. The lie that there was no chance of World War III. Remember that I told you that Iran would retaliate when all the other so-called pundits and analysts who work for think tanks claimed that they would not. So trust me when I tell you. There's a reason the US chose not to retaliate against the Iranian strikes. It was because Iran threatened to attack Israel if they did. And Israel has nukes. In fact, Israel has a policy called the Samson option, where if they get attacked, they would nuke the entire world in retaliation. To demonstrate how close we came to this, Netanyahu chose the time of the attacks to admit that Israel possessed nukes. Nancy Pelosi, whose father was a member of one of the terrorist groups that founded Israel, even admitted that a war with Iran would involve the world. She said of the strikes, "The world cannot afford war." It is also no coincidence that Putin came to visit Damascus the same day of the strikes. Iran is not an island. Russia and China would be involved too. World War III was trending during the crisis because people are smarter than they are given credit for. The only reason World War III was avoided this time was because the US chose not to retaliate. It would be the first time since the USS Liberty incident that a country has purposely and directly attacked the US and not faced retaliation. The war machine may have chosen not to escalate this time, but it is important to remember we are already at war. It is this perpetual war that we have to stop, before it crosses that line from where there is no turning back. In my next video, we will expose the lies that we have been told about General Soleimani and why the US chose to assassinate him. Subscribe and support for more news and analysis.
So, Leslie, there has been a lot of speculation about whether Israel would go it alone, would attack Iran all on its own. What does Mayor Dagan say about that?
Well, he thinks it's a mistake generally to make it an Israeli-Iranian issue. It should be an international issue. Somehow the Saudis should be encouraged to speak up and pressure the United States. And what he really would like to happen is Israel sits back and the Americans do it for the Israelis. It would then be internationalized. He knows that Israel will be attacked, whoever does it, but they'll be attacked less. And what he's most worried about is the retaliation.
So yeah, just trying to be careful about what I re-upload, you know, don't want copyrights because this is another thing, but Syrian Girl never gave me copyright strikes or some of the others that I've used here, you know. Chris Green didn't, you know, so I'm just, you know, these tongues are falling upon themselves, and this is coming from Ayatollah Khomeini. Corrupt acts by U.S. allies cause of current situation in region. This is coming from Ayatollah Khomeini. Leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Khamenei, says corrupt actions taken by the United States and its allies are the main cause of the current situation in the region, urging regional countries to boost cooperation to undo such actions. Describing the current conditions in the region as unfavorable, Ayatollah Khomeini said the reason behind the situation and corrupt actions taken by America and its allies and the only way to counter it is to rely on inter-regional cooperation. The Islamic Republic of Iran has repeatedly announced, and Mr. President Hassan Rouhani has also explicitly stated that Iran is ready for closer cooperation with regional countries. So in other words, they're looking to chase off America from this region. Speaking at a meeting with President Rouhani in Tehran earlier in that day, al-Thani said that his country attaches importance to cooperation with Iran as an influential player in the region, pointing out that any security coordination among regional allies will be of no avail in the absence of the Islamic Republic. So in other words, even Qatar is now starting to side with Iran. And then you have this coming out. Trump to blame for accidental downing of Ukrainian passenger jet. This is from an analyst. So, yeah, no doubt, if Trump didn't order those strikes against Iran, that whole incident never would have occurred. I'm going to play some of this clip.
Now, from London, I'm joined by Kenneth Farrow, Professor.
I think I'll just download the whole thing. Hold on a second.
Now, from London, I'm joined by Kenneth Farrow, Professor of Media Practice and Philosophy with Coventry University. Good to have you with us, sir. Now, there's new dimensions, as you just heard. President Rouhani saying that it's not only one person responsible for this, and this probe that's going on with the help of international experts, Iran leading that team. And also, we had Canadian Prime Minister blaming the tense atmosphere at that time created by the U.S. provocative measures in the region. From what perspective do you look at the tragedy?
Well, I think it's interesting to see what's being said internally in Iran, and I think many people, particularly the families who lost loved ones in this terrible, tragic accident, will be somewhat relieved that there is going to be some kind of a process of law that's been followed. And certainly it's a process of law that's been followed in Iran, which needs to be now followed in the United States. What I mean by that is that if you look at the comments from Trudeau in Canada, he's simply reflecting quite a strong feeling in the country that the reason that the airplane was shot down and that 57 Canadians, amongst others, lost their lives was that there was a mistake made in Iran, but the cause of that mistake fell and falls on Trump's shoulders. What I mean by that is that this notion of collateral damage when you have it war is something that's always considered. But I don't think Trump considered the issue of collateral damage when he took that decision. Many of the commentators in Canada have been commenting in terms of Trump's position, his need to change the topic. And what they mean by that is that they're very aware that Trump is being impeached at the moment and needed to shift the focus. Now, the questions that many people are asking is, in terms of the assassination of Major General Soleimani, is that why him and why that particular moment? The Americans had information before and could have waited or could have done this earlier, so why that particular time? I think what needs to happen now, and what many Canadians are calling for, Canadians are using phrases like Donald Trump gets impeached and 57 Canadians die. So they're clearly making a connection between Trump's actions and the death of the Canadians, and I think others on the plane will do that. The final thing to say really is in terms of Trump now needs to provide the evidence. What was the evidence of imminent threat that made him take such a reckless act, which is having consequences way beyond America, way beyond Iran, and which many people internationally are condemning? We have a situation which is very similar to the beginning of the wars in Vietnam, where many countries internationally were condemning the position of the United States, its aggression, and it became very popular for many decades because of his actions in the Vietnam War. And we're perhaps seeing the beginning of this now.
All right, appreciate your comments. Kenneth Thurrow, Professor of Media Practice and Philosophy with Coventry University, joined me from London.
All right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and honors to all you fellow laborers that are kicking this word in sincerity and in faith. The Wadi Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Kaya Harakakudash for the Holy Spirit, resting upon me to do this lesson. And this lesson is concerning the whole world rising up against Esau. Now, who's Esau? Who you know as the white man, the Caucasian, biblically is known as a descendant of Esau or an Edomite, and the whole world is done with him. All right, they're done with all of his madness, all of his trickery, all right, his bombings, his oppression, and you have people that are raising up as a result of this man's actions. Now, this is a scene, as you can see at the top. Here's a scene of Iraqi Shiite militiamen breaking into the U.S. Embassy. Now, you have two main groups. You have predominantly Sunni Muslims, and then you have Shia Muslims. Which the Shia Muslims, Shiites, the state or the nation, the modern country that supports Shiites the most are Iranians. And so the Iranians, they have a lot of influence in Iraq. But guess who else wants to have influence in Iraq? Obviously, America. So what's being discussed is how there's a big proxy war between who? Iran and America. Now, America, who's on America's side in this big world war? You have Israel, which Iran and Israel, they have all types of ongoing tensions. And then on Iran's side, you have Russia. And not just Russia, they're now doing drills with who? With China. So this is a powder keg just waiting to explode. You know, and I got some more videos that I want to play. I mean, there's a lot going on. All right, so let me go ahead and pull this video up.
Tools in its toolkit to Welcome back again, everyone. It's Dina Kalmeta here. And for today's news, I do have several updates I'd like to bring to you. And I first would like to talk about the United States conducting airstrikes in Iraq and Syria. It has been reported.
This is why they're rushing the embassy. This is why they're turning up out there, because of this airstrike.
The U.S. military carried out airstrikes in Iraq and Syria on Sunday, days after a U.S. defense contractor was killed at a military compound in a rocket attack. A spokesperson for the Pentagon stated that military jet fighters conducted precision defense strikes on 5 sites of Hezbollah, an Iranian-backed Iraqi militia. U.S. officials have blamed the militia for a rocket barrage on Friday that killed a U.S. defense contractor and wounded 4 U.S. troops and 2 members of the Iraqi security forces. Military forces said that attackers fired more than 30 rockets in Friday's assault, the 11th rocket attack on U.S. and Iraqi forces since late October. 5 locations, including 3 Hezbollah areas in Iraq and 2 in Syria, were targeted. The U.S. defense official stated.
And Hezbollah is based in Lebanon, and so they have Iranian and Lebanese backing.
That U.S. strikes will weaken the group's ability to carry out future attacks on Americans and their Iraqi government allies. Iran has strongly condemned the United States on Monday for engaging in what it described as a clear example of terrorism, following the series of airstrikes against Iranian proxy groups. The foreign ministry spokesman stated that with these attacks, the United States has shown its strong support for terrorism, disregarding the independence and sovereignty of countries. The airstrikes in Iraq and Syria killed 25 fighters, and Kateb Hezbollah has vowed to exact revenge, stating that our battle with America is now open to all possibilities.
We're in that time. They down for whatever.
We have no alternative today other than confrontation, and there is nothing that will prevent us from responding to this crime.
Right, and the whole video is edifying. You can go ahead and check it out. It's from yesterday. Russia says U.S. strikes on Iraq and Syria are unacceptable. Iran and Iraq condemns U.S. strikes. There's more in it, but for the interest of time, I'm going to end there. All right, protesters attacked U.S. embassy in Baghdad after airstrikes, and that's what I was just showing, the first video. Now, additionally, this is what's happening. Iran warns U.S. its Middle East dominance is over after naval drills with Russia and China. And that's why Hezbollah, they're so bold, because they see that America's power is waning. All right, Rear Admiral Hussein Khanzadi told reporters Sunday that the 4-day exercise in the Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Oman, the Marine Security Belt, was a signal to U.S. forces operating in the region. Today, the era of American free action in the region is over, Khanzadi said, according to the Iranian Tasnim news agency. They must leave the region gradually. The Rear Admiral said U.S. forces were not needed to ensure security in the area where American and Iranian forces have been facing off amid high tensions between Washington and Tehran, Tehran being the capital of Iran, Washington being the capital of America, over the collapsed Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action nuclear deal. The joint drills coincided with an attack on American forces in Iraq, suspected to have been launched by an Iranian-backed militia, which that would be Hezbollah or some offshoot of Hezbollah. Which there's also ISIS in the area, which we know that ISIS is directly funded. ISIS or Daesh is funded by America through Saudi Arabia. All right, the rocket attack on an Iraqi military base on Friday killed 1 American civilian defense contractor and wounded 4 service members. And in response, what did they do? They killed 25 fighters, which is why the Iraqis, they're uprising right now. As you can see, in response, the U.S. conducted airstrikes on Iranian-backed forces in Iraq and Syria. You see, so we're in that time. You know, and that's all I'm going to read on this. You can read more if you want to get more in depth with your understanding. But I'm going to go into the scriptures now. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 33, verse 1. Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled. And that's talking about Esau. This applies to you. Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled. And that's what you've been doing since you came into power. Over 500 years ago, you've been spoiling, and nobody was spoiling you. And dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. Right, because even amongst these heathen nations, there's a way of doing business. These Edomites, they completely disregard that. And they even disregard the international rule of law, which they set forth. And that's what these nations be calling America out on various war crimes, acts of terrorism. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled. And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee. That's right. And you know what people hate the most? Being treated how they treat others. All right. And that's what's happening with America now. Now people are on the offensive, getting on the offensive towards America and you Edomites in general. So now we're in the time of America and you so-called white people in general being spoiled and people dealing treacherously with you, as you've been dealing treacherously with people for this past 500 years that you've been in a position of power. And you're obviously going down. Your power is waning. And that's why this man made the statement going back. That's why he had the boldness and the confidence to make the statement saying what? Your dominance is over. Your dominance is over in the Middle East. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Yeah, and that's all you hear. Of wars and rumors of wars. There's actual wars. And there's various wars all throughout. And then there's rumors of wars. You have proxy wars. Which eventually, during a proxy war, the actual representatives are eventually going to go at it. So America is going to go at it with Iran. But guess what? Iran, according to biblical prophecy in the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, they're guarded by who? Russia. All right, see that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. That's right. So these things which are coming on the earth are prerequisites before Yahweh Shai comes back and establishes his kingdom under the orders of his father Yahweh, who are both so-called black men with white woolly hair. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. That's right, so this is just the beginning. And coming into 2020, this is only going to escalate. Everything that we've seen in 2019 is going to intensify and escalate in 2020. All right, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, who's mustering the battle. This is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Right, and what's the vision? The ultimate vision is the kingdom of heaven being established, with Yahweh Shai sitting on the throne, with King David under him. All right, and the rest of the 12, and then the rest of the elect. And that can only come to pass once America is destroyed by nuclear missiles and the elites of Esau are enslaved. All right, pursuant to the book of Psalms 149th chapter, 6 on down. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. And that's what's happening. Now the vision is speaking. You can't scoff against this. This is actually happening. Everything that the elders and different brothers have been saying is coming to pass. So it's speaking. You can't gainsay this. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Right? And we see it. And you have a Russian general. He said that World War III was unavoidable. He said that last week. All right, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him. Right? Whose soul? The soul of the devil. The soul of the so-called white man, who's biblically known as an Edomite. So his soul is lifted up. Or he's lifted up with pride. Which the scriptures tell you in the book of Obadiah that the pride of his heart has deceived him. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. Now who calls himself Caucasians? It's you Edomites. You call yourself a Caucasian. You call yourself a white man. Or a European. Well, you document and you explain and you teach that you were living in the caves. And it tells you in the book of Obadiah, the pride of thy heart had deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. All right, so this is talking about you. All right, you cannot get around it. No matter how many Christians try to come with their apologist doctrine and different theological terms, it's not gonna stop anything. It's not gonna absolve you from the fact that you were created to be an Edomite and created to be destroyed. All right, but the just shall live by his faith. That's right. And the just are the nation, are the Israelites, starting with the elect of the nation of Israel. And we live by what? We live by faith, and we walk in faith, not by sight. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine. Now, what's that wine? When you go to the book of Revelation, it describes the wine as it describes Babylon and the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So the wine is democracy, women empowerment, the LGBTQP agenda being pressed. That's how he transgresses. That's how Esau transgresses by wine. He is a proud man. Again, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, which is why the Americans have embassies and military bases in over 120 countries, because he doesn't keep at home. And it's not just the American Edomite, the French as well. All right, they're dominant still in Africa. And you other Edomites, who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death. That's right. The so-called white man, he's the harbinger of death. He enlarged his desire as hell. So if he has a desire for an area, a land, like it tells you in the book of Micah, they covet fields and they take it by violence, and then they make that place into living hell and is as death and cannot be satisfied. Yeah, like there's a book. It's famous or infamous, regardless on who you talk to amongst these Edomites, called Guns, Germs, and Steel, because that's what Esau brings. Guns, germs, and steel, and is as death and cannot be satisfied. Right, Esau can't be satisfied, because you have Edomites, like you watch this documentary series called The Corporation. You have one guy, he admits that he wants to own every parcel of land, and he wants to even control the air that people breathe. He wants to own and control everything. He wants to be like the Most High. I can tell you in the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter, and it's talking about who? Lucifer. And when you read on, it describes Lucifer as a man, because it says, they that narrowly look upon thee shall consider thee and say, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? And that's what these nations are going through right now. That's why they're not looking at you in awe anymore. All right, because pursuant to the book of Revelation, at the 13th chapter, you made fire come down from heaven, and the nations were in awe of you, but not no more. All right, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people, which that's what? The New World Order. And that's what Esau wants to establish. All right, George Bush, he spoke about that. And all these different leaders up until this point have mentioned the New World Order, which is him gathering all nations unto him, all people, and conforming them to the image of the beast, and ultimately putting the mark of the beast in them, which is the RFID chip, so that he can control them. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? And that's what these nations are saying. And that's why all these nations, they're uprising against you Edomites, in particular, you American Edomites. Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay, which that's talking about debt. When you look it up in the Hebrew, the word there is ibatyet, and it means pledges or debt, which there's quantitative easing going on right now. It's not official yet. They're pumping in billions of dollars each day to try to resuscitate the economy, and there ain't gonna be no resuscitating. It's only getting worse, because you pumping more money into the circulation without anything backing it leads to what? Even more inflation. And there's a term that economists use, which is hyperinflation. All right, so we're in that time. I got one more precept. There's more I could get. For the interest of time, I'm going to just end here. It's the book of Jeremiah, chapter 41, verse 45. Jeremiah 51 and 45. My people, go ye out of the midst of her, and deliver ye every man his soul from the fierce anger of Yahweh. And lest your heart faint, and ye fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. All right, what did the Spirit bring out earlier in the book of Matthew, the 24th chapter? You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. And lest your heart faint, and ye fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. A rumor shall both come 1 year, and after that in another year shall come a rumor, and violence in the land, ruler against ruler. That's right. So eventually those rumors turn into trumors, as the saying. A trumor, meaning what? There's actually truth. There's truth from it. Okay, so, and after that in another year shall come a rumor, and violence in the land, ruler against ruler. That's right, because it's not going to be just a rumor. It's going to turn into an actual war. a full-fledged war, which is known as World War III. Forgive me, I gotta end off on this. This is the book of Revelation 11 and 14. The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. The second woe being World War II, and the third woe that cometh quickly being World War III, which is the war to end all wars. So I'm going to go ahead and end there. I pray that this lesson was edifying. Call halayim la Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, the Wadi Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Kaya Harakah Kodash for the Holy Spirit, resting upon me to do this lesson. And until next time, Shalom.
And this being the year of prophecy, I mean, you can't help but regurgitate Joel chapter 3. Start verse 2. I will also gather all nations and will bring them into the valley of Yehoshaphat, which is right there in the Middle East. The Middle East is a hotbed. Iraq, Syria, Iran, all them places. And will plead with them for my people, for my heritage, Yasha Allah, whom they have scattered among the nations and part of my land. Because all were confederate together. Read Psalm 83. And they have cast lots for my people and given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. And these Amalekites did exactly that, which is all of the nations were partakers in this, because every one had something to do with it. Yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? You've got a lot to fucking pay for. Because you have taken my silver, my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Yehoiada and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far off from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them. And that's what's happening now. We're being raised up by Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. The Rakal Kadash had woke us up as to who we were, and now we're going out there, and we're proclaiming to be Israelites, and we're also cast down Mount Sinai. And we'll return your recompense upon your head. And we constantly have those signs up. I don't have all the signs, but I definitely speak about it. You have the one sign up in particular. It says America will be consumed by nuclear fire. And I will sell your sons into the hands of the children of Yehuda, and they shall sell them to the saviors, to people far off, for the Most High has spoken it. So we're telling everybody, hey, you're going into slavery because you were partakers in this. Claiming this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. And that's what's happening now. They're preparing for war. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hoops into spears. Let the weak say, I'm strong. And that's what happened. That's why Iran has responded. And, pretty much you can't call Iran a third world country, especially when they have the #1 navy in the world. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither I will cause the mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Yehoshaphat, for there I will sit to judge all the heathen round about. And that's happening now. And we're seconds away from this. We just have a few other things that take place before it goes full scale. But just the fact that it's in the news, eventually the mark is going to be made mandatory. We're seconds away from that as well. So I hope all this has been edifying, like everything else, though. I'm just being careful about what I forward, because don't want to lose this channel as well, but also going to try to get this stuff onto my Daily Motion page, get that up and running again. Now that I've got a place to sit down and get on my computer, it just took me a while. For that, I want to say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakah Kadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakathum Jehofolak. Shalom.